Ed Sullivan knocked gently on the women's restroom door backstage at CBS Studio 50, listening to the sound of someone sobbing uncontrollably inside. It was October 25, 1964, and Barbra Streisand was scheduled to make her television debut in 20 minutes when Ed discovered that the most promising young singer he had booked in years was having a complete emotional breakdown. Through the bathroom door, Ed could hear 22-year-old Barbra whispering to herself, "I can't do this. I can't do this. They're going to hate me." Ed realized he was facing a crisis that could either destroy a brilliant career before it started or become the beginning of one of the greatest success stories in entertainment history. What happened in the next 18 minutes would prove that sometimes the most terrifying moments create the most beautiful performances. Before you hear this incredible story, hit that subscribe button because what you're about to witness is how Ed Sullivan helped transform paralyzing fear into pure magic. To understand why Barbra Streisand's television debut was so crucial and so terrifying, you need to understand what was at stake for both Barbra and the Ed Sullivan Show in October 1964. Barbra wasn't just another young singer trying to break into television. She was a phenomenon who had already conquered Broadway but hadn't yet proven she could connect with mainstream American audiences through the medium of television. Barbra had exploded onto the New York theater scene with an intensity and uniqueness that had never been seen before. Her starring role in Funny Girl had made her the most talked-about performer on Broadway, but her unconventional look, distinctive voice, and eccentric personality made her a risky choice for family television in 1964. "She's not like the other singers," Ed had told his wife Sylvia when considering whether to book Barbra. "She's brilliant, maybe even extraordinary, but she's not pretty in the conventional sense, and her style is so unique that audiences might not know what to make of her. Television is different from theater. You can't hide behind stage lights and distance." Ed's decision to book Barbra had been controversial within his own production team. Some producers worried that her distinctive appearance, particularly her prominent nose, which she had refused to surgically alter despite pressure from agents and managers, would not translate well to television. Others questioned whether her theatrical style would work for the more intimate medium of television broadcasting. But Ed had been captivated by Barbra's voice and presence during her Broadway performances. He had attended Funny Girl 3 times, each time becoming more convinced that Barbra represented something genuinely special in American entertainment. Her voice had a power, range, and emotional depth that reminded him of the great singers from previous generations, but with a contemporary edge that could appeal to younger audiences. "This girl has something that can't be taught and can't be faked," Ed had told his booking staff. "She has that indefinable quality that turns good performers into legends. We need to be the show that introduces her to America." The October 1964 booking had been planned as Barbra's network television debut, a carefully orchestrated introduction that would showcase her talents while minimizing the risk of alienating viewers who might not immediately understand her unconventional appeal. The plan was for Barbra to perform 2 songs, a show tune from Funny Girl and a standard that would demonstrate her versatility and vocal range. But what Ed hadn't anticipated was the crushing weight of anxiety and self-doubt that would overwhelm Barbra as the performance date approached. Despite her success on Broadway, Barbra had never performed on live television, and the knowledge that 60 million Americans would be watching and judging her appearance, voice, and personality had triggered a level of stage fright that threatened to paralyze her completely. The week leading up to the Sullivan Show appearance had been increasingly difficult for Barbra. During rehearsals, she had been professional and focused, running through her songs with the show's orchestra and working with the production team on staging and camera angles. But privately, she had been consumed with anxiety about how she would be received by television audiences who had never seen anything quite like her before. "I keep thinking about all those people sitting in their living rooms, deciding whether they like me or not based on a few minutes of performance," Barbra had confided to her manager the night before the show. "What if they think I'm weird? What if they don't understand what I'm trying to do? What if I'm just a freak who got lucky in New York but doesn't belong on national television?" The day of the show, Barbra had arrived at CBS Studio 50 appearing calm and professional on the surface, but those who knew her well could see signs of the anxiety that was building inside her. Her usual animated conversation was replaced by nervous silence, and she seemed to be overthinking every aspect of her upcoming performance. During the afternoon rehearsal, Barbra's vocals had been technically perfect but lacking the emotional fire that made her Broadway performances so compelling. She was clearly holding back, afraid to fully commit to her performance in case it was rejected by the television audience. "She's singing beautifully, but she's not singing like herself," Ed observed to his musical director after the rehearsal. It's like she's trying to be what she thinks television wants instead of being the extraordinary performer who conquered Broadway. We need to find a way to help her relax and trust her instincts. 2 hours before airtime, Ed had planned to have a brief conversation with Barbra about the performance, offering the kind of encouraging words and professional guidance that had helped countless performers overcome pre-show nerves. But when he went to find her in the backstage area, her assigned handler told him she had gone to the restroom and hadn't returned. Ed waited 15 minutes, then became concerned enough to check on Barbra personally. When he approached the women's restroom, he could hear the unmistakable sound of someone crying, not the gentle tears of normal pre-performance anxiety, but the deep, racking sobs of someone in genuine emotional distress. Ed knocked softly on the door. "Barbra, it's Ed Sullivan. Are you all right in there?" The crying stopped abruptly, replaced by silence. After a moment, Barbra's voice came through the door, clearly attempting to sound composed but betraying obvious distress. "I'm fine, Mr. Sullivan, just touching up my makeup. I'll be out in a minute." But Ed could hear that Barbra was far from fine. Her voice was thick with tears, and there was a quality of panic that suggested she was on the verge of a complete emotional breakdown. "Barbra? I'm coming in," Ed said gently. "I think we need to talk." Ed had never entered a women's restroom during his entire television career, but the severity of the situation overrode normal considerations of propriety. He found Barbra sitting on the floor, her back against the wall, her face streaked with tears and her performance makeup completely ruined. "I can't do it, Mr. Sullivan," Barbra said, her voice breaking with emotion. "I thought I could, but I can't. There are 60 million people out there who are going to see me and think I'm ugly, that I'm weird, that I don't belong on television with beautiful, normal performers. I'm going to humiliate myself and embarrass you for giving me this chance." Ed had dealt with nervous performers throughout his career, but he had rarely encountered someone so completely overwhelmed by self-doubt and fear. He realized that Barbra's crisis went beyond normal stage fright. This was a deeply talented young woman who had been made to feel inadequate by an industry and society that valued conventional beauty over authentic artistry. Ed sat down on the floor beside Barbra, ignoring the damage this might do to his expensive suit. "Barbra, look at me," he said gently. "I want to tell you something that I've learned in 20 years of presenting performers to America." Barbra looked up at Ed with eyes full of tears and terror. "The performers who last, the ones who become legends, are never the ones who look like everyone else or sound like everyone else." Ed continued. "They're the ones who are brave enough to be completely themselves, even when that means being different from what people expect. You're not on my show because you're conventional, you're here because you're extraordinary." "But what if people don't like me?" Barbra asked, her voice small and vulnerable. "What if they think I'm too strange, too ethnic, too theatrical for television?" Ed smiled, remembering his own early days in television when he had worried about whether his stiff presentation style would connect with audiences. "Then those people weren't meant to be your audience," he said. "But I promise you, Barbra, there are millions of people out there who are waiting for someone exactly like you. Someone real, someone unique, someone who isn't afraid to show emotion and vulnerability along with incredible talent." Ed paused, then shared something he had never told any performer before. "Do you know why I really booked you on this show? It wasn't just because of your voice, although your voice is magnificent. It was because when I watched you perform, I saw someone who was completely honest about who she was. You didn't try to hide your emotions or pretend to be someone else. You were authentically, courageously yourself. That's what great performers do. They tell the truth through their art." Barbra's crying began to slow as she listened to Ed's words. "But I'm so scared," she whispered. "I've never been this scared of anything in my life." "Good," Ed said, surprising her. "Fear means this matters to you. Fear means you care enough to want to do your best. Every great performer I've ever known has been terrified before their biggest moments. The difference between the good ones and the great ones is that the great ones use that fear as fuel for their performance instead of letting it paralyze them." Ed stood up and offered Barbra his hand. "Now, are you going to let fear rob America of the chance to discover one of the most talented performers of her generation? Or are you going to walk out there and show them something they've never seen before?" Barbra took Ed's hand and allowed him to help her to her feet. She looked at herself in the restroom mirror, seeing her ruined makeup and tear-streaked face. "I look terrible," she said. "You look real," Ed replied. "Now let's get you cleaned up and ready to make history." The next 15 minutes were a whirlwind of activity as Ed's makeup team worked to repair the damage to Barbra's appearance while Ed himself stayed by her side, offering encouragement and helping her prepare mentally for the performance. "Remember," Ed told her as they walked toward the stage area, "you're not performing for 60 million strangers. You're performing for the people in that studio audience who came to see you, and for everyone watching at home who needs to hear what you have to say through your music." At 8 p.m. Eastern Time, the Ed Sullivan Show went live to the nation. Ed did his opening monologue, introducing the evening's entertainment while privately hoping that Barbra had found the courage and confidence she needed to deliver the performance he knew she was capable of. When it was time for Barbra's segment, Ed walked to his mark with unusual emotion in his voice. Instead of his typical formal introduction, he spoke directly to the American people about what they were about to witness. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ed said, "tonight we have the privilege of introducing you to a young lady who represents something very special in American entertainment. She's not like other performers you've seen. She's more honest, more emotional, more willing to share her soul through her music. Please welcome, making her television debut, Miss Barbra Streisand." Barbra walked onto the stage and America got its first close look at this unusual young woman who would soon become one of the most successful entertainers in history. She was clearly nervous, but there was also a determination in her bearing that suggested she had made peace with her fear and chosen to channel it into her performance. Barbra positioned herself at the microphone, looked directly into the camera and began to sing "People" from Funny Girl. From the very first note, it was clear that something magical was happening. Her voice filled the studio with a power and emotion that the television microphones could barely contain. She wasn't just singing the lyrics, she was living them, sharing her own experiences of loneliness and longing for connection with millions of viewers who suddenly saw their own struggles reflected in this young woman's performance. Ed watched from the wings, amazed by the transformation that had occurred in the past hour. The terrified young woman he had found crying in the restroom had become a force of nature, commanding the attention of everyone in the studio and everyone watching at home. When Barbra finished "People," the studio audience erupted in applause that seemed to go on forever. But more importantly, Ed could see in Barbra's face that she had found something during that performance: confidence, self-acceptance, and the knowledge that her authenticity was not a weakness but her greatest strength. Barbra's second song, "Happy Days Are Here Again," showcased a completely different side of her personality, proving that her talent was not limited to dramatic ballads but encompassed the full range of human emotion and musical expression. The response to Barbra's television debut was immediate and overwhelming. The Ed Sullivan Show received more positive viewer mail about Barbra's appearance than for any debut performer in the show's history. Record companies began bidding wars for her recording contract. Movie studios started developing projects specifically for her unique talents. More importantly, Barbra's appearance demonstrated that American audiences were ready for performers who didn't fit conventional molds, who brought authenticity and emotional honesty to their art rather than simply conforming to established entertainment formulas. "That night changed my life," Barbra said years later. "Not just because it launched my television and recording Barbra Streisand taught me something about the responsibility that comes with having a platform like the Ed Sullivan Show." Ed reflected years later, "Sometimes our job isn't just to present established brilliant people discover their own courage and share their gifts with the world. If this story of overcoming fear and finding courage moved you, hit that subscribe button and tell us, have you ever helped someone discover their own strength during their moment of greatest doubt?" Sometimes the most important thing we can do is remind talented people that their authenticity is exactly what the world needs to see.